Good morning, colleagues. Greetings to you all, and I hope you're doing well in these tumultuous times. First, thank you to DHED for arranging this series of engaging workshops and this colloquium. And thank you too for inviting me to present today. The topic I've been asked to address is open learning and online learning. Are these two sides of the same coin? Let me share my PowerPoint. Let me begin by trying to understand this quaint English saying, two sides of the same coin. Collins Dictionary suggests that they are different ways of looking at or dealing with the same situation, whereas Merriam-Webster says they are very closely related, although they seem different. For example, violent behavior and deep insecurity are often two sides of the same coin. In order to address my question, my presentation will have three parts. First, what is open learning? What is online learning? What is it we're talking about? Second, how are they related? And third, how can we benefit from this relationship? Open learning is a term that's been around for a very long time, long before the term e-learning was coined. According to Martha in 1975, it eludes definition, but as an inscription to be carried in procession on a banner, gathering adherence and enthusiasm, it has great potential. South Africa has some great examples of using open. The doors of learning and culture will be open. This was a clarion call in the Freedom Charter in the 1950s. And then in the 1980s, many churches declared that their schools would be open. Open learning did make its way into our first education post-apartheid policy as an approach to education. It was defined in this white paper as an approach to education which seeks to remove all unnecessary barriers to learning while aiming to provide learners with a reasonable chance of success. And it goes on to talk about in an education centered on their specific needs and located in multiple arenas of learning. It's built around key principles. Those principles aim at opening up particular features or aspects of learners, hoping to inform and transform educational practice, and all forming part of a social justice agenda. There are three clusters of open learning principles contained in the white paper. There are those around access, those around success, and those around accumulating success. I'll elaborate later on these principles that make up each of the clusters. To note at the moment, however, that the principles are in tension. There's a tension between enabling access and adequately providing for success, between being flexible but providing enough structured support. So the quest is to open learning optimally. Let's now turn to online learning. Is it the other side of the coin? I was delighted to find this article, 2020 article, How Many Ways Can We Define Online Learning? They managed to come up with 37 or so. Unfortunately, the article cost $45 to access, so I gave it a miss. Instead, I found many definitions of online learning. Many of them were similar to this kind of definition. Online learning involves enrolling in a course on the internet and learning through online videos and assignments. This gives the impression that all learning has to be online. Bates, however, suggests that that is not the case. Online learning, he says, is any form of learning conducted partly or wholly over the internet. He goes on to talk about the important thing to remember is that online learning is primarily a mode of delivery, a way of delivering education to learners. It's not a particular method of teaching. It has no quality connotations. I'd like to suggest that rather than using the term mode of delivery, we use the term mode of provision, because learning is something we engage in rather than something that is delivered to us on our doorstep. In order to explore this notion of mode of provision in more detail, I'd like to introduce you to a grid which Sadie has developed and which we found extremely useful, particularly in this time. It has two axes. There's the horizontal axis, which speaks about where the learning takes place. So if we explore that horizontal axis, we start on the left-hand side with campus-based. Campus-based, we're very familiar with this, lecture theatre-based, classroom-based. We move over all the way to the other side and we think about remote learning. And in South Africa, we've had long experience of remote learning. UNISA, with its over 300,000 students, most of whom are studying remotely. And then, of course, we have additional universities offering teacher education through distance education, some at quite some scale. So that's our horizontal axis, where the learning takes place. The vertical axis talks about the technology that is used. And it moves up from being digitally supported, almost all education nowadays is digitally supported, to being internet supported, internet dependent, and then fully online. You'll see that we concur with Bates that these last three, internet supported, internet dependent, and fully online, make up online. Sorry, I moved on too fast. Make up online learning. Now, before the pandemic, we were mostly in this bottom quadrant here, the bottom left-hand quadrant, campus-based, digitally supported. And then what happened in the pandemic is that we were forced to move diagonally right to the very top right-hand corner of this grid here, where we were, particularly in the early stages of lockdown, it was remote and it was fully online. During the course of the lockdown, various changes were made. In some cases, universities offered students to come onto campus and stay on campus, but still engage in fully online. So then they were at the top left-hand quadrant of this particular grid. We find this grid really important as we move into our new normal. It's a way in which one can try and define where the new normal is going to be in terms of how much co-presence there is and how much technology is used, obviously always appropriate for the learner. Now let's move to considering this issue of two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, we have open learning, which, as I've described to you, is a set of principles. On the other hand, we have online learning, that is a mode of provision. In my mind, this is not two sides of the same thing. It's not the same coin, I suggest. But rather, I do suggest that they can be related, open learning and online learning. It seems to me that one can use the set of principles to critically review the mode of provision. Remembering Bates that the term online learning says nothing about the quality of teaching and learning. He also notes that emergency online instruction was often conflated with quality online digital learning, which is far more deliberate, purposeful, and well-conceived. And notes that now several institutions have renewed their focus on quality assurance and have begun a more deliberate transformational process that ensures the instructional content is student-centered, aligned with programmatic learning outcomes, accessible to all learners, and effectively designed and delivered. What he's in essence done is start to examine the quality of the online learning. I would like to suggest that we use the online principles for opening learning to comment on the quality of the online learning we are increasingly offering. And so the question emerges, does the online learning opportunity increase access and remove unnecessary barriers? And we have to ask ourselves some questions. These all come from the principles in the white paper. Are the opportunities meaningful? In particular, is physical access assured? We have seen a great deal in COVID, where although the opportunity was offered, students were unable to take advantage of that offer for connectivity reasons, device reasons, a whole range of reasons. Secondly, we have to ask, is the access to the content facilitated with links made to learners' experience? have we provided a pathway in for learners to be able to understand what it is we are asking them to engage with? Then is there appropriate flexibility where, when, and how the learners learn? What time are you asking them to come to synchronous classes, for example? In general, we are asking you to say, do you have a fair understanding of your target audiences? What barriers they face in accessing the learning opportunity? And can you remove any of these barriers? Let's turn now to the second set of principles, enabling success. Does the online learning opportunity enable that success? Is it working towards appropriate outcomes? Does it build on learners' experience? Does it encourage demand active engagement? Does it create the conditions for a fair chance of success? And then importantly, do you know these things? Are your learners staying in the system? Are they passing their modules, attaining their qualifications, and emerging with the knowledge, the character, the competencies, and the meta-learning needed for the changing world? And then finally, does the online learning opportunity help the learner accumulate success? Is prior learning and experience recognized wherever possible? Are arrangements made for credit transfer? Does the articulation between qualifications facilitate further learning? In other words, are you supporting your learners along a pathway to being equipped for a socially and economically productive life? So in conclusion, I would like to say that the recent pandemic has served something of an inflection point for what quality entails as institutions grappled with this conversion of thousands of courses from traditional to digital formats in a very compressed timeframe. I suggest that we have in our open learning principles a really appropriate for the South African context, high-level measure of the quality we need in our online learning provision. So I hope that I have shown you that yes, these things are related, open learning and online learning, but they are not of the same point. Thank you very much. I hope to enjoy questions from you later.